Hey, everybody. Welcome to another How to Succeed podcast. This is the show that helps you get to the top and stay there. This week, we are talking about how to succeed at recruiting and hiring top sales performers with Jamie Crosbie. She's right there and she's ready to go. This podcast is copyrighted by Sandler Systems Inc. and protected by U.S. copyright laws. Sandler is the worldwide leader in sales, management, and customer service training. You can find more information at sandler.com. And as always, if you haven't yet, click the like, the subscribe, and all that good stuff wherever you're listening or watching to this one so you get notices about future episodes. We got great sales leaders and sales people on every week to help you get to the top and stay there. I'm Mike Montague, Director of Community Engagement at Sandler, and Jamie Crosbie is CEO and founder of Proactivate. They're a sales talent acquisition firm, and you can find them at proactivate.net as well. Okay, Jamie, we're talking about how to recruit and hire top sales performers. Opening thoughts. You've been doing this for thousands of people. What do you think?
I think it's so critical, Mike, that we realize these are salespeople. They're selling themselves in the interview process, right? So we have to have a much more in-depth qualification process that is really well thought out than most of our hires. So this is an area we specialize in. We believe it takes great salespeople to find great salespeople. And we've got to dig under the surface to do so.
Well, it's kind of funny, right? In sales, sometimes I feel like the person's best sale is the job interview. They're convincing you to hire them. But it's
Right.
also a funny business where you don't want to hire a salesperson who needs a job. If they can't
Yeah.
make that sale, that's another red flag, right? So we got to find and recruit, I think, hire people that are already doing a good job selling something else. So I would
Absolutely.
love to jump in there.
Yes, I could not agree with you more. I think you want the talent that's working and winning, and so I mean, there's right now even more so a war for talent. The unemployment rate's low; it's 3.4% right now. It just dropped again, and so a lot of times companies are really looking for people that are out on the market. They are then limiting themselves to the 3.4% unemployed candidate, which is kind of trying to find the best of the worst, which, instead of going to find people working and winning and doing well, where this would be their next step or an upgrade to their career.
Yeah, and I feel like that's challenging sometimes, and there's a lot of myths and misconceptions. So I would love to hear your thoughts. I have a few on finding and reaching out to these top sales performers because I think for me the number one mistake people make, and it kind of goes two ways, is they assume that if somebody's selling for a competitor, they can sell for them, or they have to have industry experience. That's another one we hear a lot. And
Yeah.
oftentimes great salespeople can sell ketchup popsicles to people with white gloves, right? They don't care what the product is. They're looking for the best opportunity that's maybe going to give them the most advancement or the most income, and they don't really care what the product is. But also sometimes it's hard to tell if somebody is really succeeding somewhere else or if they're happy, unhappy, or there's an opportunity there with somebody. So what do you think there?
I agree. And I think the best of the best salespeople are the best because of their mindset more than their skill set. So a lot of people ask us, when do we only find talent with industry experience, or do we think that they need to have industry experience? And for us, it's dictated by our clients in terms of what the core requirements are for the role. But if they ask for our advice as trusted advisors, which they often do, our answer and my belief is that it's will more than skill anyway. 80% of
Mhm.
sales success is based on mindset. So it's that grit, that commitment to excellence, that perseverance, optimism, I'm going to win no matter what mentality. And then, there obviously is a skill set piece or an experiential piece to it, but it's what level of ideal client are they selling to? What sales process are they used to? Is it a consultative sales process? Or is there
Yeah.
alignment and synergies between their current experience and that experience, which is so much, just sales process, activity, all of those things. so much more important than the industry piece that can be taught. Although there are some industries that absolutely, feel and believe that they have to have that. In general, I would say it's not as critical as the other components.
I love what you said there. I heard three things. Obviously, the commitment, the will to succeed. They'll have a figure it out factor that
Right.
makes successful top performers a lot more resilient across jobs. The second thing you said though is the industry. If they're selling big conceptual services and they're used to asking for hundreds of thousands of dollars, and then you put them into a sale where they have to ask for 45 bucks 1,000 times, that's going to be a lot different. And certainly the other way, usually people's money concepts get a little funky there. That it can be challenging for people in different roles, right? That I think it's weird. And so those are a big one. But I love what you highlighted about sales process. That if you find somebody who has worked in these enterprise sales and they've dealt with complicated deals like this before, that's more valuable to me than industry experience. Or if you have a really fast sales cycle, you got to find somebody who's used to working fast and it's a one call close and it's a go type of sale. Those are big factors in whether somebody's going to be successful or not. Any other common misconceptions or things that we should look out before we move to how we actually do this?
I don't know that it's necessarily a myth, but I just want to drill down on the importance of digging under the surface as we're qualifying sales talent, because I think a lot of times it's a misperception, right? That a lot of leaders make, or a mistake that we make, where we just hire salespeople that we like, and we like them because they reflect us. Like we think that they are like
Yeah.
us in some way, without even consciously realizing that. We enjoyed lunch with them, and we just know that they'll be great. And so we really need an objective process of which to qualify talent. And again, be looking for the people that aren't looking, to court them to our opportunity.
I love that. Yeah, so much hiring, not only for salespeople, people hire people that are like themselves, and then they don't have a very resilient team. They have everybody that are one trick ponies, or there's a reason why you're a manager, right? That if you were really that much of a rock star salesperson, you'd be making more money selling
Right,
a lot of times. But
right.
that happens with entrepreneurs and small business owners a lot too, as they want to replicate themselves, which doesn't work very well. All right, let's jump into behavior. I feel like, especially in this crazy job market we're in right now, doing the right thing at the right time is critical. And I feel like most companies don't move fast enough. But if you move too fast, you can make bad decisions if you don't inspect, what you're
Yes,
expecting here and really do due diligence. So obviously, outsourcing to having a Sandler trainer interview your people, or working with
yes.
Jamie and having somebody else take some of this off your plate allows you to move faster. But what do you feel like are the keys to timing here in recruiting top people?
Well, I would totally agree with you that it is critical to think of the timing and doing the right things at the right time. I always say hire slowly, fire quickly. And then, I say that and I qualify it, because I was recently at a speaking engagement and I said hire slowly. And then I had to qualify, because I thought, okay, today in this marketplace, we are wanting to court talent, obviously opening ourselves up to 100% of the market, not just the unemployed. So we're wanting to court talent. And it's very, very critical that you do have a process that moves quickly once you get them engaged, because people who aren't looking, once you bring new opportunities to them, are typically off the market in 6 weeks. So while I say hire slowly, I mean methodically and thoughtfully, as to
Right.
not make hiring mistakes. But once you find someone that, this could be an upgrade to their career, and that would really raise the bar on your team, then get them through the process, right? It's really,
Yeah.
really critical to get them through that process in a timely way. And I say fire quickly because a C player lowers the overall performance of the team. And there's a 76% variance between a top performer and a poor performer. So holding on to C players too long really shows that you accept mediocrity. Now, I will say this, obviously, and I know you believe in this, and as part of Sandler, that you want to give people all the tools and training and development and resources to be successful. But if they're not doing their part, and
Yeah.
the activity pieces of that, or really digging into all of the resources you're providing, or they've been given the opportunity and it's not turning around, that needs to be handled.
Yeah, that's a really tough one. I love what you said. I think if somebody's out of work and they're not making income, you probably, and you really want them on your team, you probably need to move quickly, that they're not just going to sit there and not do anything for 6 months while you try and figure it out. But if somebody is in a job and position and you're recruiting them and it's something that you would really love long term on your team to grow your business or as a future leader of your company, I think it's okay to take a few months and figure it out and maybe wait for the right person, right? It's very situational there.
Well, it is situational, but even those people, once they kind of
Yeah.
start considering new opportunities, they're usually off the market in 6 weeks. So here's my biggest piece of advice in this area. Think of your pipeline, not just in the perspective of revenue, but a talent pipeline. And that is your biggest revenue insurance you have, protecting your greatest asset, which is people. And therefore, you won't make hiring mistakes because you won't be desperate. You will already proactively be considering where you have C players that need to be replaced, what growth plans you have within your sales organization, and what your typical turnover is, and be ahead of that proactively so that you're always interviewing great people and you know who that next hire would be and you won't compromise. Also,
Yeah.
create what an ideal candidate profile looks like so you don't compromise because you won't know if you found them if you don't know what you're looking for.
I wanted to talk a little bit about the ABC here a little bit more too, and then we'll talk about some techniques and what the hiring process looks like. But um, for me, I found there's kind of three buckets. There's people that get it, they have that will, commitment, they figure it out, they're just a good fit for the role, and they take off. And maybe it's just your sales cycle plus a couple of weeks or whatever your onboarding and training is, and they're up to speed. That time to ramp up, very short, you got it. Then there's these other people that just don't ever seem to get it. They're not making the calls. They make more excuses than they do phone calls. And and you're like, this is not going to work. And you can move on from those very quickly. The interesting one is that middle bucket, though, where I think we need to see continuous improvement and we need to support them and engage them and have an onboarding. And some people do maybe need more time, especially if they're young and this is their first role or this is a new industry or there's a longer sales
Mhm.
cycle that, if you're selling to hospitals or governments and it takes a year to sell anything, it might take you a while to figure out
Yeah.
or for them to build relationships in a new industry. And so I think those are the tough ones. Do you have any recommendations for um, really, I guess for me, it goes back to that will and are they doing the behaviors? Are they doing the things they need to learn and grow in those longer sales cycles or those more complicated kind of middle buckets where maybe they're making progress, but they're not making sales? Do you have any other advice?
I do. I mean, yes, get your Sandler trainer is one of my pieces of advice there. I mean, because I think those are the people we want to spend time with, the A's and the B's. And one of the biggest mistakes we make as leaders is to try to invest all this energy into raising the C player up, when the reality is the C player is probably a C player because of their effort, or they wouldn't have gotten hired. I mean, we all do make hiring mistakes, but it's typically that they're not putting the energy in, they're not doing the activity, and so the B's are a great place to spend some energy because they're B's because they really do need development from a skill perspective in a certain area, but it's not their own personal activity, motivation, initiative. And so on those, I would say that is an area to spend time and to really, I mean, I think that's an area that those people need to know clearly what's the number one thing that we as leaders think that they could improve on that would change the trajectory of their success. And then we need to be developing them in those key areas. And I remember back prior to starting Proactivate in 2005, I was vice president of sales at Career Builder, and the CEO, actually, it was before I got promoted to vice president of sales. I was the regional sales leader in Dallas, and the CEO showed up in my office one day, surprise visit. He was in Chicago, showed up, or I think Atlanta at the time, and just said, if I were to go around asking everybody in this office, what's the number one thing Jamie thinks you need to do to improve and take your, sales to the next level, will they know the answer? And I said, they will, because that's what we work on in their one-on-ones weekly. And that's that day he promoted me to vice president of sales. I say that to say that's critical. Like those B players and even the A players, those are the people we want to help to spend more time with, to develop, because they're doing the things that they can control. And then we can help give them more resources to make them better.
Awesome. Now, the only thing we need to cover here is the hiring process. I feel like there's a lot of people here in the technique bucket that do this in weird ways. I'm sure you've seen lots of mistakes people make in the hiring process, and online filters and robo interviews and all kinds of weird things that people do. And for larger companies, sometimes that's okay. That's what you have to do. And if you're getting enough people, and I always say, if you're hiring good people, that's fine. You can have false negatives where you send away good people and you turn people off, as long as you hire a good one. But if you have false positives where you're hiring people you think will sell and they don't, that's really where the problem with your process lies. And I want to hear more about what you do to help people too here throughout this process, because I think that is interesting. So tell me about the ideal hiring process.
So I think it really begins, Mike, with identifying the ideal candidate profile. And that's more than a job description. I think that's the problem, is a lot of companies stop there. And so again, these are salespeople. It really takes salespeople to go find great salespeople. In the large companies that we work with, they often have a really great infrastructure of an HR team, which can be wonderful and make a huge impact, but they're typically not made up of salespeople that have time, because they're dealing with the needs of the overall organization to go find talent that is working and winning and court them. That's a longer process. So I think first and foremost, making sure you've got the right resources established to go find the right type of person, and identifying what that right type of person is, based both from a non-negotiable requirements of the role, the sales process, those perspectives, but also the culture of the organization, the culture of the leader, and just your own resource as a leader of what do you have in terms of your resources to help bring someone up right now. Because if you're more limited, then you do maybe need more experience right now. Or if you have time to invest in someone, then maybe you can look at the profile a little bit differently. So step one, identifying the ideal candidate profile. Also critical, have a prediction. Look at your C players, your turnover, and your growth plans for the year. And for every opening you anticipate, interview 3 great people for every opening that you anticipate, so that you proactively ahead of that opening coming up, so that you don't make hiring mistakes and that you protect your revenue. Then you have to create these are all steps in our process that you could do on your own or you could do with a partner, but you have to create a customized talent acquisition strategy, a recruiting strategy, so to speak, that is aligned with your ideal candidate profile. So that with the mindset, and when I say that, what I mean is, if you're looking for people who are doing well in their current role, then think about who has a similar sales process, what industries, what types of companies. You may need to direct source them from there. So when we create a talent acquisition strategy, our thought is, where are these people out in the marketplace naturally? And how do we capture them there? Where are they online looking for leads or business acumen? What types of networking groups are they a part of, or trade shows, or what journals are they reading? And what companies might they work for? For us, where do we go? Because we are well networked, both socially and from a business perspective in this realm of sales. So referral campaigns that you can do, things like that. But how do you go find the people working and winning? And then once you have your talent acquisition strategy, you have to have a customized qualification process to that profile that includes what I believe should be three things. And this is where a lot of us make mistakes. Most companies have a qualification process somewhat in the area of skill set. And that's it. It's just about experience, industry experience, sales process, sales success. That's really important, but that's 20% of the formula. So we engage in an 1.5 to 2 hour in-depth, customized sales behavioral interview. Sales behavioral interview, meaning we really believe past performance is a great indicator of future performance. So we need to ask behavioral interview types of questions to dig under the surface, which means they're not yes or no. They're open-ended, digging deep through the layers. These are salespeople again. So skill set, again, one component. Mindset being another critical component. And again, 80% of success. So the interview needs to incorporate a mindset component. And finally, we strongly believe in including a simulation. So if it's a sales leadership role, it may be simulating a sales development for a team meeting. It may be a one-on-one, having a tough conversation. It may be coaching one of your sales team members. If it's a sales role, it may be simulating a sales call. Or overcoming objections in the close, getting the appointment, whatever are some critical components. You want to see people in action, not just to see how well they do, but to see if they ask for feedback, if they're coachable, if they're going to ask for an opportunity to try again. There are so many things we can learn from that.
I love that. That's one of my top tips as well. And I've just seen a huge difference whenever I've done hiring is that you got to see them do it. You need the example. Saying they've done it or saying they've made cold calls in the past is completely different from actually making one and seeing them do that. And I was an art director for a while for an advertising agency, and it was really cool, our interview, because we could have them pull up Photoshop or Illustrator and say, look, I want you to resize this logo. I want you to redraw it from scratch. I want you to Photoshop this image and change this roof color from black to white. And just, you can sell instantly whether somebody's familiar with the program or not, rather than they put Photoshop on their resume. And you can tell how fast people work, how they think, all kinds of cool things when you do these behavioral interviews that I think the simulation part is really important in making them do those. One thing I was going to maybe add to that from a Sandler perspective is I love objective data, because when you're in the hiring process and as soon as you meet with somebody face to face, you're going to fall in love with some people. You're going to get the mirroring and matching and those good, just human endorphins that happen when you're face to face with somebody or you're interviewing. And it can really mess up your hiring process. So whether that is an assessment or a profile up front to give you some info, or having your Sandler trainer or Jamie interview them before you talk to them, allows different parties access and different parties opinions. And that could also be people on your sales team. So have one of your top performers interview this person and meet with them and get other third party objective feedback. And that really helps, in my opinion.
I totally agree. And I love, so one of the things that I think is really important when you talked about having a team member interview, also incorporating top performers profiles into your ideal candidate profile. You made me think of that. But an assessment is typically part of our process because 80% of our clients want to utilize an assessment. They have one and, we'll incorporate it into our process. So having that objective data to look at areas of which to dig deeper. And when we work with Sandler, clients, which, a lot of times Sandler associates or franchise owners will refer to us on the talent side. When we work with them, a lot of times the Sandler representative is involved in the interview process even before the client interviews them. Like they'll interview our top 3 and then, push the candidates forward. I think that's so important. You want to have different people involved in the interview process. whether it's other leaders of the company, other executives, not just one perspective. So I'm so glad you mentioned that.
Personality styles is a big one too, because you might get along with somebody doesn't mean they will actually sell. So having different people of different personality styles doing the interview allows you to get that more objective and 360 view of somebody. Once again, we're talking with Jamie Crosbie. She's founder and CEO of Proactivate. You can go to proactivate.net for more information. Tell her you heard her on the Sandler podcast there, the How to Succeed podcast. And you can also talk to your Sandler trainers, and they can help you work with Jamie as well. So don't be afraid to get help if you need it in hiring. We are certainly happy to help with that aspect as well. But I wanted to get to know you a little bit, Jamie. So these are my cheesy job interview questions for you. I hope you're prepared with good answers. I'm sure you don't get the tables turned that often. How do you define success at this point in your career?
Gosh, that's such a great one. How do I define success? It's different now today, I'm sure, than when I started. I feel like my success today is defined by how successful I help make the others on my team. Because really my job as a leader is to help them change the trajectory of their success. So when I feel successful looking at the fact that I've got 2 senior leaders that have been with me for over a decade, and to see how they've grown in their career, that brings me gratification. So I would say that's
such a weird point in your career when your job becomes making yourself obsolete, that,
I
the people are
know.
bringing you.
It is. And you're doing a good job if the company can run without you. I mean, that's,
Yeah,
if you're gone, things don't fall apart. You're like,
love that. Now, flip side, was there a biggest failure or lesson learned in your career that you had to get over in order to be successful? Is there a
yeah.
failure you're most proud of?
Well, a failure I'm most proud of. I think one of the biggest lessons I had to learn was that you can't expect, as a leader, it was my first leadership lesson where I expected everyone would just like do what I did. I
Do what they're
probably
told.
did hire people that I liked and that were like me, and then I expected them to behave like me. I assumed they would all care as much and work as hard, and where I wouldn't have to actually hold them accountable as much. That I could just assume they would do their job unless they had a question, and if they did, they would tell me.
Yeah, that's not unusual, and sometimes a hard one to learn. It
It
could be
was
a
hard. That was
costly
like in my
experience.
20s. But I mean,
Yeah.
as I've run my company, of course, I've made multiple mistakes. Just I think initially turning on the lights in the market and just selling anything to anyone because you're just so excited. Like in 2005, I remember the first day I started my company. And I did have a very strategic business plan, but you are the evangelist of your company. So you're like, yes, we can do that. Oh, we can do that. We can do that. And then you realize, no, this was really meant to be specialized in these key areas. And this is what makes us unique. And this is what we do.
Two good ones there. All right, last question. Do you have a favorite quote, motto, or mantra?
I did my favorite mantra, and it's kind of my own quote, but fully live on purpose with capital P purpose. So fully live on purpose with purpose, but the second purpose is capitalized, looking at the bigger why, the bigger picture behind it. But it's really, for me, about living intentionally and helping others be fully who they were created to be.
I love it. Thank you so much for chatting today. Jamie Crosbie, founder of Proactivate. Find her at proactivate.net. Links in the show notes and stuff below as well. If you haven't already, click the like, the subscribe, leave us comments, let us know how we're doing, suggestions for future guests, and all kinds of other feedback. We want to hear you. This episode with somebody that you think needs to hear it. I'm sure there's a lot of hiring managers and sales leaders out there that need to hear this conversation. And until next time, wherever you are, be a good one. That's what I always say. Yeah.
Love it. Thanks, Mike.